Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go.
All right, here we go with another episode on containers from the couch. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. If you just started tuning in, drop us a line in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I'm your host today, Cy Venom, Principal SA at AWS, and I'm excited to get into today's topic about securing your Kubernetes containers, especially when running on Amazon EKS with auto mode. So I know that was kind of a mouthful, but we're going to break it down step by step. And we're going to first start by introducing my guest today, Patrick Smith. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe also tell us about the really cute mascot that Chainguard has. It's an octopus, squid, not sure. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Patrick Smith. I'm staff developer relations engineer at Chainguard, which is a great company to work for. And I live in Queens in New York. And I'm one of those, when I'm not talking about how awesome Chainguard is and geeking out over containers with you, I'm hanging out here in Queens, and I'm doing the sauna, I'm in the cold bath. I'm one of those annoying guys, you know what I mean? So, and Linky is our mascot that we love very much, and he's a purple octopus, okay? And the story behind it is, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about Wolfie later, but we have an open source distro called Wolfie, which is like a tiny minimal distro, it's like an undistro. And the Wolfie is the tiniest octopus in the world. It's a real octopus. It's the size of half your fingernail. And you should look up some YouTube videos or something of him online. He's very elusive. There's not that much video of him, but he's tiny, a little tiny octopus. So that's why we named him after. And Linky kind of comes after that.
That's super cute. And I guess there's got to be some connection to the small octopus. Is it more secure in the ocean?
It's minimal. That's the leap, right? So it's a tiny. Our OS is tiny. Our containers, we try to make them as small as possible, as minimal as possible, to decrease the attack surface, and that's a tiny octopus. So maybe
nice.
It's a little,
I love it. And so, Patrick, we talked a little bit over the last couple days, last few weeks about this episode, and we found an angle that I think makes a lot of sense. It's combining the power of Chainguard, and we're going to get into Chainguard containers, Chainguard libraries, and of course, I think the one sentence key takeaway that I get from Chainguard is kind of secure by default. But we talked about how, along with auto mode, we saw a lot of similar value propositions. The way that we're talking about auto mode with customers is similar to the way that Chainguard is kind of presenting itself and its solutions as well, as of kind of making it your containers secure by default. As a simple example, in auto mode, the Amazon machine images, right? The underlying OS is immutable, right? Amazon manages that for you, keeps CVEs low. And I think one of the things that Chainguard likes to say is zero CVE, which instantly makes like bells go off in my head. I'm like, how is that possible?
Yeah, so we can get into that.
Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so when I joined Chainguard, I was kind of like, yeah, it's a security company. Like they say zero CVEs. I'd never really heard of zero CVEs before. And I know we're not all born knowing all these acronyms, and I used to be a teacher. I like to explain the acronyms. So CV, it's common vulnerability and exposure. So it's a known vulnerability that's in a database that could affect your application. And so they do matter. And I was kind of like, zero CVEs, that must be kind of like marketing. Right? But then I got to Chainguard, and the reality is we do it. So, and we could talk about like how the methodology and how we get there exactly in practice. I mean, there's no like special magic or trick to it. It's a whole lot of different kinds of work, and we have some like technical philosophy that we could talk about later. But basically, on most days, sometimes I say a day that ends in Y. It's any given one of our containers, the median container is going to have zero. Now, with that being said, CVs happen, and we patch them for criticals within a week. And everything else within 2 weeks. It's an industry-leading SLA, and we're really proud of that. So it's not a trick, it's not magic. It's a lot of hard work, and I think some good technical choices, and we do get there. But it's not magic, and you'll see that later in the demo, because we're actually going to show an image that's sort of with 0 and sort of with 1, and we'll get into it.
All right, yeah, let's do it. And one of the things that I really find interesting is we're going to dive into a demo. We'll show how everything works. But crucially, Chainguard, you guys have a really strong presence in the open source community, and I find that really interesting and awesome because I think my first exposure to Chainguard wasn't necessarily Chainguard containers and libraries. It was the amount of open source development that you guys kind of help contribute into CNCF related projects in the container community. I think you've almost established this reputation of being a steward of open source projects. So tell me a bit more about that. Why is Chainguard so involved in contributing to open source projects? What sort of things are you guys working on?
That's sort of what we come out of, is the open source, and our mission is to secure open source and to provide like production ready SLA certified open source. And our founders have created projects that you may have heard of, such as Kubernetes, okay, which we're going to play around with in a minute, and a bunch of other really awesome open projects, open source. And we actually just adopted a project, Canico, which was we love Google. Google makes a lot of cool projects, but sometimes they kind of kill them off. And we just adopted one, and we're very proud of doing that. And we're actually looking into do that more. And we actually are very well set up to give kind of like a retirement home to some of these projects, because of our we have this kind of very world-class leading infrastructure we call the Chainguard factory. There's basically all this nuts and bolts to maintain bleeding edge open source software. So it kind of makes sense in some ways for us to be adopting some of these projects. We're actually
the Canico one
a few more,
the Canico one is really interesting, because I think it actually does align nicely with the mission of Chainguard of being able to build these containers within a cluster. That's as secure as it gets, right? It's an ephemeral environment. You spin up the container builds and then it's gone. And it's done in a Kubernetes native way. I've always been interested in that project, so it's good to see that we're keeping it alive. And I know that there's a number of folks out there that are using it. So props to you guys for helping maintain these types of projects. Okay, so I do want to get into the nuts and bolts, and I think the best way to do this is through a demo. But let me maybe do a little bit of back end for this, because folks watching are trying to learn about Chainguard, also trying to learn about this in the context of Amazon EKS, maybe in the context of auto mode. We don't do slides on the show, but I want to show just two really quick ones, which I think get the point across really easily of, with standard EKS, everything in the purple, blue, pink color you see here is kind of what customers had to manage themselves. With auto mode, we're kind of diving a bit closer and helping customers manage the actual data plane, the nodes themselves. So you can see a lot of the colors change between these two, and everything that's grayed out will manage for you, and just the pieces in the color are what customers are responsible for. And so in this context, we find that with auto mode, a lot of customers are leveraging partners like Chainguard to help manage some of the components, like the app container side. So while auto mode helps at the platform layer of the node operating systems themselves, like the OS running on the instance, which in auto mode is Bottle Rocket, by the way. It's immutable. You let us handle it. We get you to as close to 0 CVEs as we can. Auto mode also has some interesting things where it'll automatically restart your instances after some time. So that, combined with what Chainguard does at the application layer of giving your containers, your app containers, a secure by default operating system. And we'll also get into the libraries, like Python libraries and those kind of things that the Chainguard offers. I think that's the angle that we see here, is that together you can make sure you have a secure stack from the very infrastructure, the bottom layer, all the way to where your apps are running. And really that's the story we're seeing here together with Chainguard. So Patrick, with that, tell me a bit about the demo you're going to be showing today.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Maybe let's even get into it.
Yeah, we're gonna do the peanut butter and jelly. We're gonna be doing auto mode plus Chainguard. and we've got 2 clusters. Let me get into my full demo slouch here. We got a nice blank command line here on my screen. So we're going to have we have 2 clusters running. Okay. And I call them demo silver and demo gold. Okay. Just arbitrarily, but basically one is kind of I don't know, not to say standard, because there's a lot of different ways you can set up a cluster, but it's as close to standard as I had in my mind. And I deployed a Flask application. So Flask is a minimal web framework for Python, and it just shows one little static page. I deployed it to these 2 clusters, and one where I sort of hand deployed all the nodes and everything like you would normally do, and then another one which is I call demo gold, and that's on with a Chainguard container, as opposed to the standard Python container that you would just if you do Docker pull Python. That's what I set up on demo silver, and then on demo gold we have EKS auto mode. Okay, and I set that up with. I'll show you the command that I used to set it up. But basically, it was just like create cluster. It was very short. I added the region superstitiously, which I didn't even really need to do because the region was set. So it was very simple to get the cluster going. And then it manages all there's node pools, and then the nodes get managed automatically. So when I deployed the pods, it just kind of created nodes for it, which is pretty cool. And I'll kind of geek out a little bit on Automode a little bit here too, because I enjoyed setting up this cluster and just seeing some of the more annoying stuff just kind of like that I usually have to deal with just kind of go away a little bit, which everyone always likes to see. Okay. And we'll talk about a little scaling and stuff. So am I sharing my screen, Si? Am I good to go?
You're good to go. Awesome. And I don't think I need to tell you to make it any bigger because you got the memo. It's big enough.
I make it huge. Yeah. My eyesight's not too good. So, but I think on a demo, it's always good to have a nice big one. But we'll probably have to go out a little bit here and there because of some displays. But so let's do kubectl just to get a sense of what is set up. Kubectl get pods. These are the kind of things that you're going to be doing when So we got one workload running here. It's my Flask application. I'll show you what it looks like by port forwarding it in a second. But let's also just do kubectl get nodes. So these are the managed nodes. And so this is the nice version. This is the gold version. Okay, we're going to go back in a minute and do some scanning, do some other stuff, and compare between these. So
Patrick, I want to have you run one command in this nice cluster. Can you want to do it? Pods, but with the -a. I want to see for all namespaces. Let's see everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do it. You want the pods, right? Not the nodes.
Pods, yeah.
Capital A.
Capital A.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so I just want to point one thing out. You'll notice that in any standard EKS cluster, you'll see things like the CNI pop up, kubeproxy, the Carpenter controller, all of these things, right? And the reason why you don't see that in the context of auto mode is that we manage that for you. It's not on your data plane. It's not running on your nodes. It's all running on our control plane. So yes, that includes the daemon sets like the CNIs and the kubeproxies and all of those other components that get started up on every single node. The metric server, of course, that's an add-on. It's something that you add on top and you maintain yourself. But a lot of those other components that you would traditionally see are kind of masked away from you. And yeah, you got to the next point with the node pools.
Yeah,
those are essentially driving the nodes that get created. And for general purpose, for demos like this, you didn't have to customize the node pool or anything.
I just use general purpose setup. And you can see, we're going to do it in a second. It's very cool how you can see the nodes appearing and disappearing in real time. It's scheduling them. We need to spin up one other node to do the scheduling. Let's do that now, because what I want to do is, we've got the one workload, so kubectl get pods. So I've got my one Flask pod here, and let's just scale it up. So let's do able to scale. Kubectl scale the deployment, and then we'll do it's called Flask app, and then we're going to say replicas equals 20. And then I'm actually also going to add this just to give it a little bit of an interactive component. I'm going to add kubectl get events and we're going to watch it. So what this is going to do is it's going to auto scale up to 20 pods. And then what you're going to be seeing on the screen, and we'll just do it, I guess. Hopefully I actually typed the correct one. Yeah, there we go. So what you're seeing is actually the scheduling. And there's some cool stuff here. You'll see them. Oh, it's this is a problem with this one. It'll add a node, and you're seeing this in real time. And it's not quite done yet. It's keeping working. I'm going to switch over in a second just to show you the pods that have all been created.
Yeah, so it's trying to start these pods, but it'll complain that, hey, we don't have enough space to start these pods. And this is
but not a problem.
How auto mode works, powered by the Carpenter. Of it waits for something it can't schedule. And with the EC2 infrastructure that powers all this, how fast we've been able to network it, you can see it spun up a new node and put the pods in there and started the containers in the time it took me to say the sentence, right? Like that's how fast.
I mean, this is kind of why we do stuff like this. Like, if you don't like this kind of thing and you're in DevOps, like maybe you're in the wrong industry. Like, it's kind of. I thought this was kind of cool seeing all these events pop up, and this is also cool if you do kubectl get pods now. You just see, yeah, look, I got 20 now. No problemo. That's kind of neat. And now let's just forward. Just so you know that it's actually doing something. Port forward to localhost. Really quick. Can I actually open? Yeah, there we go. Localhost 8.123. Yeah, so there is an actual app running.
Nice.
And it's linky as best. We got all our little octopus emojis.
Love it.
Here, okay. So that's I just wanted to show that because I thought it was cool. And I'm new to this, and I thought it did take some annoying stuff off the plate when I set this up, and especially doing them in comparison, I thought kind of showed some interesting stuff. So what I'm thinking, unless you want to show something else, what I'm thinking now is to get into a little scanning and talk about the security side, okay? And yeah, let's do it. So if people aren't familiar with this side of things, so that there's CVEs, those are the known vulnerabilities. Then there's a whole ecosystem around that, okay? Of tracking those and also scanning software artifacts for those CVEs. And we've got some amazing scanners. There's Gripe, there's Trivy, there's Inspector, that's your guys' one. There's Orca, there's Docker Scout. There's a whole ecosystem of these scanners, and we love them all at Chainguard. We use them all. We use Gripe a lot for our internal infrastructure, but we partner with everything, and we scan with everything. So what I'm going to use is Trivy. Because Trivy to me is one of the OG scanners, and it's like a very heavyweight one. It has a lot of options, and one is to scan the whole cluster, which I really like. So I have Trivy already installed. Trivy, Trivy's created by Aqua Security, so I just call those guys out. And then we're gonna do KAS for Kubernetes. Okay. Actually, you know what? I want to switch to it's better if we do the bad old one first, okay?
Right. Because you were saying you have two clusters, right? One that's like
CTO.
Nice with auto mode and Chainguard containers and all that good stuff. And we want to also show the old school approach of, what if you just did it without following these security best practices?
And so with this demo silver, what I did was I did it the sort of manual setup way, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. And it's a normal way. It's the way I've done it for years, which you manually provision the nodes, and you're setting all the roles and everything like that. And then I just did Docker pull Python, and I used that. Okay, so I would say there were some more lighter weight ones, the stuff that you could pull from Docker, maybe based on Alpine, but I just did Docker pull Python and just went with that, and that's what a lot of people do. So now we got it set up. We changed the config, so we should be talking to that. So let's do, and just to double check, I'm going to do kubectl get node pools, and you'll see that we don't have that on this cluster, right? It's not node pools. It's manually configured nodes. We have nodes, but not node pools. So let's do Trivy, Kubernetes, and then we'll do report summary. And I'll tell you why we do that. It's basically because if you're scanning the whole cluster, there's just so much output that it almost becomes unusable. So I would always use report summary. And I actually have a whole guide on using Trivy that's on our Chainguard Academy website, so we can check that out. It's very comprehensive. So it's going to take a second to run. So basically what this is, it's going to scan the whole cluster. It's going to show both CVEs, so common vulnerabilities and exposures, known vulnerabilities. It's also going to show things like misconfigurations and stuff. And I will say these are go ahead.
So I was going to ask, does this check the containers as well as like the underlying OS? Like what scope does this check at?
This checks for the clusters. It checks, you'll see it checks both the workloads. Okay, so this is the top one here, but it also checks a bunch of the infrastructure. And I would say this is a great tool for tightening up your Kubernetes clusters. You know, you can run this on it. A lot of these warnings about misconfigurations, you know, some may not apply. Some are really easily resolved. So this is a very naive setup that I did. Okay. So let's zoom in here a little bit and just look at our workloads. Okay. So we have the workloads here, default. This is the Python app silver, and we have 11. We have 11 critical CVEs, unfortunately. Okay. And then we'll actually maybe do some of this with another scanner just so you see it's not just Trivy, but we have 11 critical, we have 23 high, we have 66 medium, et cetera, et cetera. So we have quite a few known vulnerabilities that are in this container, okay? And then there's a certain number of misconfigurations and everything like that. Again, that's naive, but we can also compare when we switch over to auto mode as well, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll switch to the other cluster. And we'll run trivia again. So let's do, I'll just copy here. Yeah. Okay. And then, so I just switched back to my, the auto mode plus Chainguard version. And let's do the same thing. We can just run the same command. Okay.
You know, it's kind of surprising because even to see that many critical CVEs, I mean, what base image are we using on the other?
We're using Python. So if you do Docker pull Python, that's unfortunately. I will say that 11 is unusually high. I would say the last few months maybe it's hovered around 6. There have been a cluster of CVEs that came out in June. So currently, I'd say we're well above baseline on that. Now, most of those are I think all resolved in the Chainguard Python container. We won't get into it, but we'll look and do. The question is there a CVE in this Python container that we're using here? Trivy currently it says no. So you see, look at here. This is actually the second line is the workload here, and this one I think is just Trivy running. Yeah,
that's pretty interesting to see that the Trivy's own container has some
yeah, it is interesting, but you know, this is situation normal, Sai. You know, I mean. It feels like it should be the case that there aren't known vulnerabilities in this software that people base all these workloads on, but there are, and I think people are so used to it that they're kind of inured to it. They're like, oh yeah, whatever. There's 11 critical problems with mine, but actually that's really bad because those are all in a database. Like some attacker can just look that up. So it actually should be remediated.
So on average, there's I looked up the numbers on this. There's about 130 CVEs that go out every single day. So Patrick, there was a good chance that, you know, potentially when you ran this demo yesterday versus when you ran it today, maybe a CVE could have popped up. But so far, I feel like, you know, it's true to the 0 CVE here. And
no, I'm gonna blow us up here. So this is, you know, I hit a demo where everything goes well. So I want to run this and say there actually is a CVE in the Chainguard container. So she's and because this gives me an opportunity to talk about some of this stuff, and also just to show that this stuff isn't made up. So gripe, and let's just do cgr.dev Chainguard. Hopefully they didn't fix it overnight. I think they did. I think I looked at it this morning. Python.
Yeah, you guys do builds every morning, right?
We do them overnight, yeah. So basically, we pull the Chainguard factory builds in real time always. So the second someone commits upstream in one of the 3,000 projects that we track, 3,000 plus, we pull it in and it kicks off this huge rebuild. And you know, it's this whole like very efficient, modern like Rube Goldbergian thing, which then everything cascades down to everything that depends on that project. So one person commits. It rebuilds that project, then everything downstream of that project gets rebuilt. And that all happens in real time. But for the containers, it pulls all of that in overnight. Okay. So we do, according to Gripe, we have one CVE. Trivy's not currently picking it up. And this is a CVE related to, I think it's tar extraction or something like that. Not the most critical, because I think it can just like gum up the works or something like that, like allow for a DDoS type situation or something like that. So it's not like a remote execution type situation, but you know, there is a CVE in it. I would expect this to be resolved. You know, these come and go. You'll see it for a day, you'll see it for 2 days. And you can go and look at our console, which has a very cool visualization, and you'll see some of those, popping up and then kind of going away. And then just long stretches where we don't have any CVEs.
Yeah, yeah. It's just so interesting because a lot of folks, developers, they'll just start with the base image like Node.js or Python or even like Debian, a bunch, whatever it might be, and they won't necessarily consider that the last time those images were updated, or even the process that those images are updated by, aren't necessarily addressing the latest CVEs. So how hard is it to get started with these Chainguard images? Should developers be doing it like from day one, or is this more of like now that you're ready to deploy, you're ready to go to production, you add it in as an afterthought?
No, I'd say they're generally, in terms of migration and like switching over to Chainguard images, it's fairly straightforward in the median case. There are some things, so we aren't just into zero CVEs. There's a few other things that we like to talk about at Chainguard and sort of encourage our customers to sort of raise the waterline for security. For us, security is like serious business. It's not check a box, So we try to push our customers a little bit to, and our users, because we have all these public tier images, to use what we call they're hardened images, basically. So basically, we run images that the default image, if you pull a default, like that one we just pulled, the default Python image, or that container is going to be, that's going to have no shell in it, which I know sounds kind of crazy. It's going to have no package manager. Okay, it's extremely minimal and cut down. It just has what's necessary to run your workloads in production. And you're probably like, whoa, wait, how do I debug it or whatever? And there's a whole bunch of there's Kubernetes ephemeral containers. There's a bunch of open source projects you can use to sort of sideload stuff in to debug. There's a whole ecosystem. But basically, we think you shouldn't have a shell in your production container. We think you shouldn't have a package manager for security, and to avoid CVEs, and also just to harden those containers, because those are great targets. Okay. So I just wanted to point out too here the geeking out over auto mode again. So that just doing the naive setup with auto mode, and I was a first time person to set this up. Okay, it actually cut the misconfigurations that Trivy noticed here in half. So it's only like 13 or something, and from like 20 something on the sort of manual setup. So I thought that was kind of neat as well. So you guys are taking care of that node provisioning side, the AMI, all of that underlying stuff that you don't have to worry about. And then Chainguard, we take care of that application level, language runtime level hardening. So I think they go very well together.
Yeah, and that's the idea, and kind of what you were saying before about you don't want to have a shell in production containers, like absolutely, and similarly in auto mode with the instances being a little bit more locked down, we call them managed instances, so it's kind of like a shared control thing. We actually restrict the ability to SSH into these nodes, and
Cool.
Quite frankly, we don't think you should be SSHing into the nodes directly. There's kube native ways to debug your containers. If you're in dev mode, launch a shell through Kubernetes into your containers. That's the right way to debug. You shouldn't ever need to SSH into the nodes themselves.
Well, people are just cruising by on the internet, SSHing into everything. So you really, you don't need that.
Right. Yeah. And you guys have -dev containers, right? Which do come with.
Thank you. Exactly. Because I don't want it to sound too hard, So we do provide if you pull our, sort of default container, it will be that hardened version, because that's the one we're pushing people toward that to the extent. But you can totally use the versions we have that are also, generally speaking, zero CVE. They're production grade. They're called dev, which kind of freaks people out, but really they're production ready containers that are far more secure than some like off the shelf other container. And actually just want to show the sizes too, really, really quickly here. So these are the containers I pushed to work for the pods, and it's the regular Python one was over 1 gigabyte, and this one is like less than 100. And 20 megabytes of that is just my application and all that stuff I added on it. So if you actually do just the raw Python, then yeah. And I would say there are lighter weight ones. that you can get. This one is the Docker pull Python is not necessarily the smallest. I think if you go get one based on Alpine or something, it's going to be have a much nicer looking situation. But that is a lot. Like a gigabyte is a lot. And I wouldn't say it's the most important thing, but like it's certainly using fewer resources is certainly a nice added bonus. We don't do it for that reason. We do it mostly to reduce attack service, but I think it's kind of a cool comparison.
And that's like the default Docker Hub image for Python. It's a gig.
It's a gig, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Wow,
and you could do. I could do. Now I'm going off the rails, but you could do Sift. Get an SBOM Python and just see everything that was in it. This creates an SBOM software bill of materials. It's basically like a label, like a food label for your software. And I don't know. There's a lot of controversy about SBOMs. People are like they're not useful, but I actually kind of often find them useful because I'll be like, well, what's in this? Like what packages do we need? Can we actually pull things out? So when you're scrolling. There's a lot of stuff in these, and it's a lot of it is just convenient stuff or like stuff that maybe someone asked to be put in and it was never taken out. Like I would say half of this stuff, 70% of the stuff doesn't need to be in here.
Maybe that's a good segue to talk a bit about Chainguard libraries. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a new product that Chainguard is offering, and basically, we are with containers. We're at this language runtime and application layer, but customers, of course, and users are always adding. They still want to use pip install, language ecosystem stuff, or npm install, or use Maven Central, and anything in that language ecosystem, it's not secured in the same way that the containers are secured. Okay, and the main issue there is the supply chain. Okay, and increasingly, software supply chain attacks are kind of the main way that organizations get attacked. Okay, so for example, there was the Ultralytics attack in December. That's Ultralytics YOLO. It's a machine learning fast algorithm machine learning model. It's a popular Python package, and that was an attacker managed to take over their GitHub Actions. They pushed some bad releases. Eventually, they got a hold of a long-lived API token, and customers who pip installed that, they were pulling in a malicious package. Okay, and if you were using Chainguard libraries, we take everything upstream of us, all these open source packages, the entire PI, Maven Central. Those are the two ecosystems we're doing right now, Python and Java. And we rebuild everything within that very cool Chainguard factory that I was talking about before. We have absolute top shelf security, operational security, and we sign at every step. We follow SALSA to compliance, so we're signing at every step. And basically, if you were to use Chainguard libraries and that YOLO package, you would be unaffected by something like that attack that happened, because you would be using the release built in the Chainguard factory. You wouldn't be using that release that had the actions corrupted.
How does Chainguard rebuilding these libraries make them any more secure?
Basically, so imagine that the attacker, there's all these places that the attacker inserts themselves in this supply chain process. So the attacker can, on the repo, sort of get push permissions or whatever, or do a PR and modify the source. That actually doesn't happen that often, but that's a possibility. The attacker can corrupt, which does happen more often, the build. The attacker can take over the releases page that's corrupting the distribution, or do a man in the middle, or the attacker can do all of that to upstream projects. Okay, so there's all these places an attacker can intervene and sort of allow for a bad release. And basically, if you use Chainguard libraries, even if the attacker, say, intervenes and changes their build process or whatever, we just go all the way upstream. We take that source and we build it ourselves. Okay, so the attacker would have to hack us, which is generally a more difficult proposition than attacking one of these upstream providers. Okay, and hasn't, knock on wood, but hasn't happened yet. And and basically, so if you were using Chainguard libraries, these supply chain attacks, which are increasing in frequency, and I could tell you one that happened every month this year in the Python ecosystem, bad releases that get uploaded to PyPI, or these repos that get taken over. It's called repo jacking. And if you're using Chainguard libraries, you're not going to get affected by this stuff.
Got it. And that's all security is, right? It's limiting the blast radius, limiting the number of things that might negatively impact you. So Patrick, I feel like we've gotten to a good place in the demo. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Maybe the upcoming Chainguard event, I think later this month?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're doing In Containers We Trust. So I think you're speaking, Sai, too. So I'm sure you're going to have something pretty cool prepared. And basically that's fun, informal, technical talks related to security. It's a half-day event. It's online. So I recommend checking that out. And then I'd also like to share this link. And I just have a file that says links here. And I will share this in the chat if I can figure it out. If you want to unshare my screen, I'll try to paste this into the chat. So,
yeah. Go for it.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Hopefully that went out. Tell me if it didn't.
It came to me, but I'll throw it in the broader
thank you,
channel.
Si. I appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, and
is
so
this
that is our and I really recommend people check this link out and sign up. We are creating our first Chainguard community. And so if you're into containers, if you're into software security, you can sign up and hang out with like-minded folks. And we'll be doing a quarterly Q&A with Dan Lawrence, who by the way is just like a security genius and like a legend. And people do enjoy him. He's also very funny and wears a lot of weird hats. And you can see what weird hat he's wearing at the Q&A. And those who are like participating the most, I'm hearing, are actually going to be flying to New York in March, which is for our second Chainguard Assemble conference. Okay, so maybe if you join that community and you're hanging out, and maybe you go to Assemble, maybe I'll raise a pint of Smithix with you guys because it's actually St. Patrick's Day, the day that we're doing Assemble. So that's gonna be nice. A big day.
That's gonna be fun.
Here in New York.
So Patrick, one last thing I want to give you an opportunity to share with our audience of the best way to get started. And I think it's kind of critical here to think about security. I think for a while people were trying to stick the secure into DevOps. It's DevSecOps. It really does need to be a part of your development, the way you build containers from day one. So Patrick, what would you recommend our viewers today, whether they're ops engineers or developers? What's the one key takeaway from today's session for building secure containers on EKS Auto Mode and Chainguard? What's the one key takeaway for them, and how can they get started?
I mean, look, if you're in a position to, like, sometimes you need to do things the hard way, but sometimes you don't have to do things the hard way. Sometimes you can let things, like people who have worked on this stuff for years, just do it for you. And I'd say that's kind of what auto mode is, right? You can not have to worry about nodes anymore. You can let the AMI be managed. I love that. And for Chainguard, maybe you don't need to have a team of engineers sitting around with a spreadsheet manually looking at CVE numbers. Maybe you can just switch to containers that are actually secure by default and not like fix Ubuntu or like fix Debian and that be your job. So just, I don't know. It's 2035. Do things the easy way.
I love it. And by the way, if you go to images.chainguard.dev, you can see the images that Chainguard has, and some of these are actually public as well. You can just start leveraging them today for free, right? So leverage the Chainguard automation and how they secure container images from
we've got AWS stuff, CSI driver, all that kind of distro stuff. We have a huge catalog of 1,300 plus containers now. Very
awesome.
Proud of our catalog.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, Patrick, I want to thank you for joining me today. Any last words, anything you want to share with our audience today?
It's just been a lot of fun, Saya. Thank you. And thank you for your workshops and everything. I love them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Patrick, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. For our folks that are viewing, maybe watching the recording after the fact, drop us a question in the comments below, or feel free to reach out to Patrick on, what do you think, Patrick? LinkedIn?
I think I'm on LinkedIn the most these days.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to Patrick on LinkedIn. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us. Until next time.